Atlanta's love and hip-hop scene has reached a nuclear breaking point, therefore put an end to what you're doing. Nothing, prepared us for the complete mayhem between Sierra Gates and Yandy Smith-Harris in Season 1B, despite the fact that we have witnessed drinks being flung and tables being turned. When Yandy delivered the ultimate shock, staring Sierra in the eyes and yelling, "Your husband is gay," what had begun as a contentious argument over devotion evolved into a social media firestorm. After a brief period of deafening calm, the entire set erupted into a real-life battleground. Security was taken by surprise. The cameras were on the verge of being toppled, and a friendship that had lasted for 10 years suddenly disappeared. Is Yandy telling the truth, or did she just do the ultimate betrayal for a plot point? The turmoil is being dissected frame by frame today. The accusations, covert motivations, and the catastrophic fallout have caused Atlanta's elite to choose sides. This is more than reality TV, so grab some popcorn. It's a catastrophe that could change your life. Atlanta has always had a very aspirational attitude. However, there has been something far more poisonous in the air between Sierra Gates and Yandy Smith-Harris lately. We must examine the subtle changes that occurred long before the cameras began to run for Season 1-3B in order to comprehend how we arrived to the point where chairs were flying and life-altering allegations were flung across a dinner table. Yandy and Sierra served as the model for sisterhood in the Love and Hip Hop series for many years. Together, they negotiated the perilous waters of reality TV, supporting each other's business endeavors and protecting one another from competitors. However, as any professional in this field will attest, the closer you are to one another, the more power you have to harm each other. It started off as a whisper of stress. Within the Atlanta elite's inner circles, rumors began to circulate that Sierra thought Yandy was becoming overly possessive of some economic possibilities. Conversely, Yandy heard rumors that Sierra had made some casual remarks against Yandy's managerial style and her relationship with Mendici's family. These few sparks are typically sufficient to ignite a fire in the realm of reality TV. However, there was a complete fire at this particular event. The action took place in a posh lounge with soft lighting and loud personalities. You could sense the energy in the room, even though the whole ensemble was there ostensibly to celebrate a new launch. It wasn't positive. Yandy showed up with her boss lady demeanor fully in place, looking professional and polished. Sierra, who has always been the glamour queen, was radiant and seemed content in both her marriage and her successful work. They stayed on opposite sides of the VIP area for the first half hour, avoiding eye contact. However, a clash was unavoidable in a space with so much history and such a limited size. It all started with a discussion on loyalty. In this community, the term is frequently used, however each person's interpretation of it varies. The topic of who had whose back during a recent social media dispute came up when the group sat down. Sierra made a remark that seemed to be a direct swipe at Yandy, possibly feeling a little too strong after a drink of champagne. She implied that true friends don't keep track of the favors they do and that some people are only faithful when the cameras are on. In an instant, Yandy's expression changed. The Harlem Yandy that we all know and either love or dread started to show through the professional masks. Are we really talking about loyalty, Sierra? Yandy questioned, lowering her voice to a dangerously composed tone. Because we can open this whole box right now if we want to discuss what is genuine and what is not. Sierra told Yandy that she was sick of the holier-than-thou mentality, but she didn't back down. In fact, she leaned in. And that Yandy should cease serving as the group's moral compass. The argument swiftly intensified, with voices rising and the rest of the cast, including Spice and Carly Red, observing with a mixture of fascination and terror, realizing that this wasn't your typical manufactured feud. Sierra made the error of bringing up Yandy's marriage, implying that Yandy spent so much time worrying about everyone else's business because she didn't want to face the reality of her own home life. This was years of repressed resentment bubbling up to the surface as the argument intensified. Yandy took a deep breath, met Sierra's eyes straight, and uttered the statement that will go down in LHL history. That was the point at which there was no turning back. "Let's talk about your husband instead than mine," Yandy growled. Let's speak about why you're so desperate to maintain this cheerful home front while everyone in the city is aware that your husband is gay, Sierra. You're the only one who is unaware of this. The room's sound abruptly shifted. It wasn't just a gasp, but rather a collective exhalation that gave the impression that the lounge's air had been drawn out. Sierra's expression changed from angry to motionless, like someone who had just been struck by an unexpected goods train. There was a brief period of pure stillness, which is unusual for this program. Sierra didn't say anything in response, and even the producers behind the scenes appeared to hesitate, but the silence was short-lived as the shock swiftly turned into a raw, primitive wrath. "What did you say?" she asked, getting up so quickly that her chair slid backward and crashed into the marble floor. "Don't ever mention my husband's name. Don't ever bring that lie into this space," she yelled, her voice breaking with anguish. Yandy, on the other hand, did not back down. Instead, she doubled down and asserted that she had names, dates, and receipts, feeling that she had delivered a blow that could not be disregarded. Not merely an insult, but a deliberate attack on Sierra's self-esteem, her marriage, and her public persona. She told Sierra that she was sick of shielding her and that the secret was already out in the streets. Sensing that things were going to get physical, the production crew moved in, but not quickly enough, and Sierra leaped across the table, grabbing for anything she could. Glass broke, drinks were overturned, and the upscale lounge transformed into a chaotic blur of security uniforms and designer clothing. Yandy was shouting over the commotion, refusing to retract a single word, while Sierra was screaming, a sound of total betrayal and hurt, and the other cast members were confused. While Rashida stood back, clearly distressed by the intensity of the hostility, Spice was attempting to pull Sierra back. This was more than just a TV altercation, it was the breakup of a sisterhood. Sierra was battling with the strength of someone who had nothing left to lose, her wig slipping, her jewelry flying, completely intent on getting to Yandy. While security guards, strong men prepared for these situations, fought to keep the two ladies apart. The cameras showed the complete devastation left behind, broken glass, spilt cocktails, and the broken remnants of a friendship, as the security team eventually succeeded in dragging Sierra toward the exit. Yandy stayed in the middle of the room, straightening her jacket with a mask of icy resolve. The main question isn't about the fight itself, it's about the veracity of the charge. She had spoken what she came to say and didn't seem to care about the damage she had caused. Why did Yandy decide to divulge such a huge secret at this particular time? Are the rumors true, or was this a well-planned deception meant to cause Sierra the greatest pain? As Sierra is led out of the building, sobbing and yelling for justice, it is evident that life in Atlanta will never be the same for any of them. The war has officially started, and the consequences of this moment are going to reverberate across the whole season. The love and hip-hop Atlanta sisterhood's very foundation was scorched by the echoes of Yandy Smith Harris's accusation that your husband is gay, which spread beyond the lounge's four walls like a digital wildfire. While security physically dragged a screaming, hyperventilating Sierra Gates out of the building, the other cast members stood in a stunned, uneasy silence. This was a heat-seeking missile aimed directly at Sierra's sanctuary, her marriage, and her public image, not the usual reality TV read in which someone disparages another person's attire or business. Yandy stayed inside, chillingly composed, while Sierra was outside, gasping for air in the arms of Spice and Rashida. She smoothed out her clothing, adjusted her hair, and took a slow sip of her drink, all the while staring coldly and calculatingly into the camera lens. She didn't look like a woman who had just started a war, but rather one who had just finished one. Carly Red asked Yandy, "Do you realize what you just did?" when she eventually managed to speak. "I stopped protecting people who don't deserve my silence anymore," was Yandy's straightforward response. The consequences were immediate. The following morning, the Yenda vs. Sierra war had moved from the production set to the worldwide stage of social media. The fan base was immediately divided, with one side praising Yandy for being the queen of receipts and asserting that she was finally exposing a lie that had been discussed for years in Atlanta circles. The other side, on the other hand, saw this as the ultimate betrayal low blow that went beyond basic human decency by outing someone or attacking a marriage for the sake of a plot. Unable to remain silent, Sierra took to Instagram Live from her home, her voice cracking and her eyes swollen from crying as she spoke to her millions of followers. She labeled Yandy a soul snatcher and a calculating monster who was only assaulting her house because Yandy's own life with Mendices was under continual scrutiny. It's not a boss move to attack a woman's peace and a man's reputation for a check. Sierra sobbed, "That's a desperate move," but Yandy wasn't done. She was aware that in the world of Atlanta drama, an accusation without evidence is merely noise. She needed the receipts to make this stick. A few days later, Yandy sat down for a high-profile interview where she dropped another bombshell. She said she had a secret dossier, a digital folder with text messages, grainy photos, and eyewitness accounts from people who said they had seen Sierra's husband in low places that didn't match his public persona. Yandy stated that anonymous sources had been contacting her for months, pleading with her to tell Sierra the truth, and that she had not sought out this information, but rather it had found her. Production had to completely reorganize the filming schedule to ensure that Yandy and Sierra were never in the same building at the same time because of the tension on the LHHATL set. Yandy's story was that she was playing the role of the painful truth teller, while Sierra was playing the role of the voluntarily blind victim. Even impartial parties like Shakina and Rashida were compelled to take sides, and if you supported Sierra, you were perceived as a family defender. The girl code that had previously characterized their circle was officially dead. You were viewed as a truth seeker if you supported Yandy. The story took a darker turn when Sierra's husband broke his silence and did more than simply refute the allegations. He turned a reality TV dispute into a high-stakes legal struggle by threatening to file a large defamation lawsuit against Yandy and the network, claiming that Yandy was utilizing AI-generated photos and false tales to increase her personal importance. Desperate to preserve her reputation and her hair empire, Sierra allegedly spent thousands of dollars on a private investigator, not because she didn't trust her husband, but rather because she wanted to know who was feeding Yandy these falsehoods. But rumors started to circulate that Yandy's secret folder actually contained audio recordings. People in Atlanta were talking about a particular clip in which a voice purportedly belonging to Sierra's husband was heard talking about a private life that was very different from the happy married man image he projected on the show. Yandy teased these recordings in snippets, never fully releasing them, but keeping them like a sword hanging over Sierra's head. This psychological warfare was more damaging than the actual physical altercation. The most devastating aspect of this mid-season explosion was realizing that these two women, who had shared secrets, tears, and business successes, were now committed to each other's complete destruction. Yandy's composed exterior began to crumble as even her husband Mendices reportedly questioned whether she had gone too far. Sierra was constantly on edge, wondering when the next drop would come. The stage is set for a confrontation that the network had been trying to avoid, according to internal sources who claimed that there were discussions about the morality of Yandy's move behind closed doors in the Harris household. Was she doing this to protect her friend, or was she doing this to make sure she remained the undisputed alpha of the Atlanta cast? Driven by a mixture of sadness and unadulterated wrath, Sierra ultimately consented to meet with Yandy, but only if the receipts were made public on video. She was calling Yandy's bluff, and the final meeting was scheduled at a neutral, strongly guarded mansion. Sierra entered with her head held high but her hands trembling, while Yandy entered with a packet of printed documents and her phone ready. The air was heavy with the smell of pricey perfume and the impending danger of violence. The truth of a man's identity and the survival of a woman's pride were at stake, and this was no longer about a TV show. Sierra's expression hinted that the lies might be far more genuine than she ever wanted to think as the cameras focused on the first document Yandy placed on the table. The entire city of Atlanta had been waiting for this moment, the last sit-down. The atomic bomb was about to detonate for the second time, and the fallout would leave no survivors. The tension in the air was oppressive. Yandy Smith Harris and Sierra Gates sat opposite each other in a remote, opulent estate with cameras hidden in every nook and cranny. A wall of hostility had been erected between them. Sierra had stopped crying and her eyes were filled with a frigid, jagged mixture of sheer wrath and tiredness, one so high that reconciliation looked like a far-off, unattainable fantasy. "Yandy, you've turned my entire life into a circus. Today you either show me these receipts you keep bragging about or I'm taking you to court and ending your career for good, she said, slamming her hand against the marble table in a shaky but sharp voice. Without a word of protest, Yandy dug into her fancy bag, took out her phone, opened a password-protected folder, chose a video clip, and carefully moved the gadget across the table in Sierra's direction. The audio was crystal clear and unmistakable, but the footage was grainy and shot in low light. It was Sierra's husband talking to another man about a very personal lifestyle that was completely different from the happy married man persona he presented on national television. In a matter of seconds, Sierra's face grew ghostly pale, and she gazed at the screen as though it were a poisonous serpent poised to strike. "This is a phony ... Sierra said, "This isn't AI generated," but her shaky voice deceived her. Her world's basis was collapsing in real time. "Sierra, how much longer are you going to live in this shadow? I tried to tell you as a sister, but you chose to attack me," Yandy said in a chillingly distant voice. Sierra lost all control at that point, grabbing a glass of water from the table and hurling it at Yandy with all her strength. "Your veil is falling today because you refused to look at the truth when it was right in front of you." In the history of the Love and Hip Hop franchise, Sierra's screams had already turned into guttural sobs as security guards who had been waiting in anticipation of violence swarmed the area. She cried out that Yandy had permanently robbed her of her peace, that her home had been destroyed, and that the father of her children had been disgraced. This was possibly the most unvarnished and devastating moment ever recorded. With tears in their eyes, Spice, Rashida, and Carly Red, the other cast members, watched the feed from a nearby monitor. Spice buried her head in her hands and muttered, "I never imagined this sisterhood would end." Kat Yandy's face did not change amid such a blood deluge. The question hung in the air despite her firm attitude, the fact that she was only the messenger, and that she had done what a real friend should do, tell the hard truth, no matter how painful it was. After this eruption, Atlanta's social environment was irrevocably altered, and Sierra promptly announced her legal separation from her husband. Was this a genuine act of friendship or was it a premeditated maneuver to undermine a rival on the global stage? Sierra's healing journey became a painful spectacle for her fans, who could see that the vibrant, self-assured woman they knew had been hollowed out by betrayal, even though she continued to publicly label Yandy, evidence as manipulated and lies. The seeds of doubt and fear had moved from the screen into her heart. Sierra withdrew from the spotlight, closing herself off to focus on her business and her children. On the opposite side of the conflict, Yandy was the target of a huge public response, with names like homophobic and backstabber flying across social media. Supporters said that Yandy would have disclosed this private information if Sierra were actually her sister. Without the cameras, Yandy had traded a lifelong friend for a viral moment in the Season 3B finale, and instead of staging a public execution of Sierra's dignity for ratings, the boss lady image she had spent 10 years cultivating was replaced by the label of a reality TV villain. She tried to defend herself in a number of interviews, but the damage was irreversible. It was established that there had been no reconciliation, and Sierra vehemently declined to go to the reunion special, sending a message that she would never again perform on stage with the lady who had exploited her personal misery for financial gain. "Paid a heavy price for my honesty," Yandy told a skeptical crowd as she stood alone on the stage to justify her choice. She asserted, "I lost a sibling. All right. However, I was unable to tolerate a falsehood that was consuming Sierra's life from the inside out." One painful reality was shown throughout this entire story. TV loyalty is frequently the first casualty in the world of reality. Yandy and Sierra, who used to be the model for sisterhood aspirations, now won't even say their names. In an effort to start again in a place where her husband's secrets wouldn't judge her, Sierra ultimately decided to leave Atlanta completely. Yandy continued to appear on the show, but the fabled relationship was vanished, replaced by a chilly, business-like detachment. Distance in business. On YouTube and Instagram, followers continue to re-watch these videos and argue over who was actually at fault. Was it really Yandy's intention to assist Sierra? Or did she demolish a woman's house to ensure that she would be the cast's alpha? And what about the husband of Sierra? Even now, he doesn't say anything, which simply makes the questions more unanswered. This battle was more than simply an episode scene.